well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Passcode booth, and welcome everybody on Periscope. I guess this is going to be live videoed. We are very thrilled to have Hilary Cain from Toyota and Gary Shapiro from the Consumer Technology Association talk about connected cars. All right, take it away.
Okay.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, Hilary. Welcome. So we only have a limited amount of time, Hilary. We're going to talk about connected cars and the Internet of Things, but could you just set up your background in like less than 30 seconds?
Yeah, so what I do at Toyota is I'm Director of Tech and Innovation Policy, so I'm working on all the things related to the future of the car that's not related to fuel. So self-driving cars, connected cars, privacy, cybersecurity, those issues.
And you worked on Capitol Hill?
I was on the Hill for 10 long years, and I finished up working on the Science and Technology Committee doing tech policy.
And you're one of the smartest people in Washington. You have a great reputation. And could you explain to people about this self-driving car, which is the ultimate in the future?
Right.
Like, so we know we're going to go there, but there's really three types in your view, three issues.
Yeah, so when it relates to connected cars, when we talk about connected cars, I tend to think of these things as breaking down into three distinct buckets. You know, the first bucket is around telematics and infotainment. This is the screen that you have in your car where you can get map information or destination assist kind of stuff. The second bucket I like to think of is with cars actually talking to other cars and talking to the infrastructure around them. This is largely for crash avoidance and safety purposes. And then the third bucket I like to think of as remote functionality. This is the ability to interact with your car from your smartphone. Do things like preheat or pre-cool your car before you get in the morning, those sorts of things. But what I find is when we talk about connected cars, we're actually talking about sort of three different things all at the same time, which sometimes makes the policy debate a little confusing.
So in terms of the policy debate which is going on, what are the big issues with the connected car?
Yeah, so we hear about privacy a lot. That's something that seems to be front and center for a lot of policymakers and consumers, to be honest. Cybersecurity is the other space, so not only around data security and the security of the data on your car, but also the ability to maybe hack into a car and take over electronic operation of the car is something that has folks a little bit concerned. And then as we get into the automated vehicle space, the self-driving vehicle space, there's a lot of uncertainty right now around what the policy is going to look like governing that technology going forward. And we have a lot going on at the federal level and at the state level, and it's getting very complicated.
So today, if a consumer is driving in their car, or even in the future, and their windshield wiper is moving or their temperature control is showing the temperature, if that information goes away from the car, it could provide other useful information to consumers. Is that a good thing, or is that a violation of privacy?
Yeah, so I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. So the issue is there is certainly data that cars are generating today, and that could be pulled remotely that I think we would all agree falls into sort of a sensitive bucket, right? Location information is something people are very sensitive about. How someone's driving a car, like are you speeding? Are you wearing your seatbelt? Are you braking in a way that indicates maybe you're not a great driver? And then there's data that's more operational, right? Like, is the brake being pushed? Are your windshield wipers moving, which indicates, I don't know, maybe it's raining? Are you stopping and going, which indicates maybe you're in some sort of a traffic jam? And what I think we're finding is that we move towards automated vehicles, that data, that operational data, is going to be absolutely critical to the success of the system. And without it being exchanged, you will never have self-driving cars. And so, there's going to be a trade-off there.
I just want to know if the car in front of me has gone over a pothole so I can avoid it.
Absolutely. And that's very important information, not just for you, but for city planners and those who are filling those potholes to know where they are.
So some of the information should be shared. And most consumers would agree that.
Some of that information will have to be shared, or we don't get to the utopia of self-driving cars that we're aiming for.
And collision avoidance.
And collision avoidance, right.
And how about information which maybe you could get some break with an insurance company if you're willing to share it?
Right, so I think where the industry's coming down on this, and I think it's the right place to be, is you as a consumer have some control, you should have some control over whether your data is being shared with an insurance company, for example. But if you as a consumer want it to be shared, because A, you know you're a good driver, and B, you're in it for a discount of some sort, then I think that makes perfect sense.
How about as a parent where my kid wants to
Yeah.
use a car and I want to set some guidelines there, or at least get some information?
Well, and most auto companies and then other non-auto companies too are already coming out with apps and that sort of thing where you can do sort of geofencing, for example. So you can say, I don't want my kid going more than 10 miles from home, and if they do, you need to alert me. Or I don't want my kids speeding. I mean, we've got a product at Toyota where you can set speed limit warning. So if they go above a certain speed, you get a text that
Is
says.
that popular?
It is with the parents. I would not want to be a teenager today with a new driver's license, that's for sure.
Well, I remember driving along the New Jersey Turnpike, and I always felt, wow, I better not speed because I can figure out how fast I'm going. But that never really happened in terms of getting
Right.
speeding tickets.
Right.
Is that just continuing in terms of going forward, you think, in terms of policy?
Yeah, I think that you're touching on something that I think it gives folks quite a bit of pause, and that's when information should be shared with law enforcement. Could you imagine if you just sort of get these automatic speeding tickets? What I can tell you is the industry came together. We developed, folks may not know, the auto industry came together and developed a self-regulatory code of conduct to govern the use and collection of vehicle data. And one of the things that we put in there was that information like this shouldn't be shared with law enforcement in the absence of a warrant or another court order, just to set some basic guidelines. So right now we're not in a position to share information automatically about your speeding habits with law enforcement.
So the big issue that everyone's talking about today is the Apple case.
Yep.
Does that affect car companies?
I think how this plays out will absolutely have ramifications beyond just the handheld device companies. I think it has implications for the entire Internet of Things, connected cars included.
How?
If all of these devices are generating data, cars are generating data, and some of that data could be very useful to law enforcement in terms of investigations. I mean, even if we want to bring up the topic du jour, the San Bernardino situation, those guys, after they shot people, were in a car, right? And if they've been able to find that car quicker, things like that. So there's definitely data that could be useful for law enforcement, and how law enforcement will get access to it, whether they should have access to it, and under what limitations, I think is something that this case will help guide.
So if government can have access to your car, they could also maybe disable your car?
Remotely?
Yes.
Yes. So there have been, as of today, there's been no real-world sort of non-research related hack of a car, but we've seen some pretty scary stuff through some of the research community. The most recent one was over last summer when some researchers were able to actually remotely hack into a Jeep vehicle and take over some electronic control. And that really did bring, I think, the conversation around cybersecurity in cars to a whole new level. It brought a lot of attention on the issue from policymakers and regulators and consumers and privacy advocates and everybody else. So
the Internet of Things will have good sides and there'll be bad sides. And one of the issues is maybe hacking, and there's the issue of personal security.
Yep.
What do you think the government should be doing to move this Internet of Things along a way which will benefit people who drive, people who live in homes, everybody?
So I think what we're facing right now is a fairly fragmented approach when it comes for policymakers when it comes to the Internet of Things, especially in those areas like cars. I'll give medical devices as another example. Areas that are traditionally very heavily regulated industries, and I think you'd agree with me that what helped the Internet and a lot of the technology that we're using today flourish was a non-regulatory sort of approach, and now we're dealing with sectors that have not had the benefit of a non-regulatory touch, but are now entering a space that may flourish more without a regulatory touch. And how to deal with that, the trade-offs, the balances, how to maybe get regulatory agencies that have approached issues with a very heavy hand to take a step back, I think is going to be a bit of a challenge, but it's a conversation that I think we need to have, and we need to try to find a fair middle ground, or else you're going to find some parts of the Internet of Things flourishing, while maybe other parts like cars and medical devices taking a slower path.
Well, you know, at the Consumer Technology Association, we got together all the people who make these little wearables that have information, and we had everyone agreed on a voluntary set of privacy principles as did the car makers. And so do you think that's what every industry should be doing in a sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think what you guys did with wearables and what the auto industry has done with cars is a really smart approach to these sorts of things. Coming together, putting some rules of the road in place voluntarily and sort of a self-regulatory approach. I think other Internet of Things sectors would be well served by maybe trying to do something like that, because then at least as the consumers know where you stand, they know what their rights are, and then also regulators and policymakers understand sort of what playbook we're working off of.
So the role of industry is step forward and do things voluntary. What's the worst thing government can do in your view?
I think it's a tough question. I think we would be very poorly served to have, for example, cybersecurity standards in place, sort of sector by sector for the Internet of Things. I think if you had cybersecurity standards for medical devices and cybersecurity standards for cars and cybersecurity standards for fill in the blank, that would be a very bad place to be.
So do you think what the doctors face with HIPAA is a good example or an example that causes some caution?
It seems very prescriptive. But I don't know that that's necessarily the best place to be.
Being married to a doctor, I can tell you it causes huge problems in transferring information that is not always in the patient's interest.
Right.
But I see we have some time for questions. Do we have any audience questions? I'm pleased to open up. I see a diverse group of people here. Are you Tiffany Moore? You work
Yes,
at the...
I'm Tiffany Moore.
Do we have can we hear that or?
Yeah, so question for you. I just got a new vehicle. I love to connect all the kind of bells and whistles and features. So what's your favorite feature on vehicles now that you think either for safety or for awareness that cars are going to be able to provide?
Yeah, so when I came to work at Toyota, I did not have a teched out car. I did not have a Toyota, so it was not a teched out car. I now have a teched out car from Toyota that has two things that have saved me so many times. The first is a pre-collision system. So if you're not paying attention, you're about to rear end somebody, the car stops itself, which that goes off more than I would like to admit. But that means I haven't rear-ended people that many times, which is a good thing. The other thing that I really like is when you're backing out of a space, and if there's a car backing out of a parking space, and there's a car that's coming behind you, that it'll tell me not to back out because the car is coming. I do, as a mother of children, not yet driving, but as a mother of children, I do like geofencing and get the idea of getting text alerts when my kids have gone 85 miles per hour on the highway, things like that. I look forward to the day that we can have that on their cars.
The problem with all these features, by the way, is when you have a car and you get used to it, if you drive a car that doesn't have it.
Oh, I know. Like blind spot monitor? Have you?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been
Once
there.
you have blind spot monitor, you can never go back to not having blind spot monitor because you learn to rely on it so much.
Last week I rented a car and it actually warned me when I got too close to the car in front of me.
Yes.
And I was too close and it woke me up.
Right.
I wasn't asleep, but it
Right.
just
That's
alerted me.
good. That's good.
So I'm here to talk about it, which is a good thing.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of like the remote control. You notice if you don't have one in a TV set or something like that, or a garage door opener, or things like that we've gotten used to.
One of the things, you're raising a good point, and we might as well flag it. So one of the issues that we have with this idea when we talk about self-driving cars, there's this debate about whether we go from where we are today, which is not self-driving cars, to self-driving cars overnight, right? Take the human out altogether, no driver, just go from 0 to 60. And then there's other conversations about taking a more iterative approach, and having an operator in the driver's seat for a while. And one of the issues, depending on which approach you take, is the handoff. If there's no human in the mix, if there's no operator in the mix, there's no need for a handoff between the car and the operator. And if there is an operator, there may be a need for a handoff. And once you get used to the car driving itself, the idea of being able, within a split second, to take over because the car tells you it's time for you to take over could have some interesting
And the states are getting involved. California basically said that you must have a live, healthy, alert driver in a driverless car. Is that good or bad?
In the long run, I don't think it matches up with where companies are headed. But I'll say this: I would hate to be a vehicle safety regulator right now in this space. These are hard decisions to make. It's very easy for us to sit here and say, no driver, like no licensed driver should be in the car. But if something goes wrong and somebody dies, those regulators are in a really tough spot. So I don't think they're making the right decision in California, and we're hopeful that they will get rid of that requirement. But at the same time, I don't envy them in the position that they're in, because this is uncharted territory and they're just trying to get it right. And they may be on the too restrictive side of things right now, but I kind of understand. I don't think it's right, but I understand where they're coming from. Well,
the disability community is very excited about driverless cars because it'll be empowering and freeing to them, and they're not happy about that California
Right, elderly people, disabled people. I mean, we're really potentially closing the technology off to a lot of use cases here, which I think is scary. The other big thing, though, that's happening that hasn't gotten as much attention is the federal government, the Department of Transportation, issued an interpretation letter to Google. Google, has obviously been at the forefront of a lot of this stuff. They asked the Department of Transportation to do an interpretation on a number of safety standards. And the good news is that the Department of Transportation came back and said, we recognize that a computer can be a driver, which is the first time the government has acknowledged that a computer could potentially be the driver. The problem was, once you got down into the actual meat of the letter, after they made that conclusion, for each motor vehicle standard that they looked at, they determined that they either didn't have the authority to modify that, to just make a, blink of an eye change to the regulation to accommodate the computer as a driver, and that they would need to go through very lengthy rulemaking on every single one of the identified motor vehicle standards. Which I think raises a really interesting question about how we're going to do this going forward. If we all recognize that these laws need to be updated, yet the Department of Transportation is constrained to only be able to do it through a very long, I'm talking 10 years, rulemaking process, something's got to give.
So one of the questions that someone asked me, because I've been excited about driverless cars forever, I've read science fiction books, and someone asked me a question I couldn't answer, so I'll ask you. You're Harley Davidson. You're a motorcycle manufacturer or user. What do motorcycles do in this new world?
I don't know. That's a good question. I do think it's funny. I was looking at some of the comments that we were putting together internally for the California regulations. And one of the things we flagged is they said you could not have an automated motorcycle, basically. And we thought, why are we ruling that out? I don't know. I mean, why couldn't you have a self-driving motorcycle? I mean, I don't know why you would want one, but why say no? So anyway, I don't know. I don't know what happens to motorcycles.
Well, I'm glad to hear the Department of Transportation has realized that a computer can be a driver, and now maybe Mitt Romney will come back because a corporation can be a person. So why not?
There you go.
I think that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Hilary.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.